All right, ChatGPT surprising everybody by just dropping a new model on a Thursday afternoon. We're all in the middle of doing other things. I was just minding my own business, editing a video, when suddenly, boom, GPT 5.2 dropped. Well, of course, we have to test it out. Let's go take a look. So first of all, the announcement. Let's go over 472 benchmark scores and... No, of course not. I think we're kind of over that at this point, don't you? Instead, I think we should just test the two models head to head. Let's pick a few tasks and let each one go to work. In order to keep this fair, I am going to run in incognito mode or temporary chat, because if I go over here and ask GPT 5.1 a question, and then I come over here and ask GPT 5.2 the same question, there's going to be some memories that bleed from one to the other. And that's just not fair. So in order to attempt to keep this as fair as possible, it now has no memory of me, but it also has no memory of what each of the other models did. So I've got ChatGPT 5.1 thinking on the left, and then ChatGPT 5.2 in auto mode on the right. I unfortunately don't have access any longer to the GPT 5.1 auto selector, so I figured I would just leave it on thinking and give it the best possible chance. So, in fairness, I did ask the 5.2 model if it had any suggestions of tests I could run to compare 5.1 to 5.2, and it said, take a picture of your desk setup and ask both of us, tell me what's going on here, and suggest 3 improvements I could make. Okay, so I did not stop to clean my desk, as you can clearly see here. I already can guess at some of the upgrades it's going to suggest, like, put anything away. And I'd like to say I was in the middle of an edit, but honestly, my desk looks like this most of the time. Okay, for the sake of comparison, I am willing to put myself and my desk out there for public ridicule. The same photo, the same prompt to both models in temporary chat mode. Tell me what's going on here and suggest 3 improvements I could make. Here we go. All right, so the first thing I will say, 5.2 came back really quickly. So I don't know what mode it was in. I don't know if it was in thinking mode. Maybe when I play back the film, I'll see if I can notice anything. Okay, these actually came back with some kind of interesting results. ChatGPT 5.1 came back and said you've basically got a hybrid YouTube creator and command center desk. There's an ultra-wide monitor, some lights, a boom mic, and, generic life stuff around on the desk. 3 concrete improvements. The first one was how to organize my desk with creating zones, fix the cable sprawl, which I think it's maybe picking up on a couple of coiled up cables on the back. And then some tips on tuning the desk for ergonomics and filming, like get an external keyboard and mouse so the laptop can be off to the side. I'm not quite sure how that would help me because I would just be moving the laptop and putting the keyboard where the laptop is. That doesn't feel less cluttered to me. And then keeping the mic just out of frame but closer to your mouth, which was interesting because since I wasn't in the photo, it didn't really have reference to where I am in general when I'm filming. So it took its best guess, I guess, and gave me some sort of generic mic placement advice, I guess. But over here in GPT 5.2, kind of said the same thing. You've got a hybrid work and content creation desk, but then it got much more specific about what was actually in the setup. It picked up on the ultra-wide monitor and the laptop, but then it started naming the lights, and additionally, it identified the desk as a sit-stand desk, so it knows it moves up and down. So those are minor details, but it did pick up on just a couple more things. 3 concrete improvements. This was interesting because I think this version highlighted the improvements as more functional for filming improvements. So it also said the shotgun mic is too far and too high. And then it gave very specific placement instructions for where to put it in reference to where I'm standing. So if I actually did want to move that, it was much more specific about how I would make those changes. And then decluttering the desk surface, it also correctly picked up on the fact that the desk is just far too cluttered. Basically, it said, you can work with what you have. You don't need more equipment. You just need better placement and less visual noise. So it kind of keyed on the fact that this looked like it was more of a filming location and gave me advice to fix that rather than the more generic, here's how to clean up your environment. So those are interesting differences. So overall, I would say I think 5.2 actually wins. All right, so the next thing I think I want to try is a little bit more engineering related. One of the things that I really struggle with, if you've seen any of my recent videos, is creating project requirement document for the projects that I want to build. I don't come in with real strong project definitions, and so sometimes the code that I get out is kind of problematic. So I am working on myself in getting better and clearer project definitions. But one of the things that AI is really good at is helping to build those specs. As long as I can give it good enough information, it can write them well. So let's give them both a chance to write a PRD. All right, so the same prompt is going to go into each. So I want you to write a PRD, and I want this PRD to focus only on the requirements. I don't want any technical or technology details in this PRD. I am looking to build an app that's kind of an exercise app, but it's a very specific kind of augmented exercise app tracker. Periodically, I need to add exercises in. They might be for rehab or for some specific, very short-term training goal. Have persistence. Obviously, I need to be able to store information as I use it over time. I want probably Google authentication built in. So can you help me with that PRD? Do you feel like there's anything missing, any gaps that I need to fill in? So once again, 5.2 came back really, really quickly. And the difference in this was pretty striking. One interesting thing to note, I believe they've got some new little tricks up their sleeves, which I kind of love. If I can just type in here and start editing, yeah, this has been missing for quite a while. I'm almost certain that this is probably one of the features in 5.2, but that is worth a call out because that's a great update. So to summarize the differences, GPT 5.1, the document was very good. It is definitely comprehensive, but it reads very much like an old school legalese requirements document. Boring, lots of shalls. The user shall be able to reorder exercises. User shall be able to copy an exercise configuration. Everything is covered in kind of excruciating detail. And then the open items are sort of left as a section in the end of the document. So over here in 5.2, it is much more human readable. It definitely did a very good job. It was very comprehensive, covered everything that needed to be covered, but somehow made it more readable as a human and not just as a legal specification document. The other thing that I liked is it specifically called out the gaps and questions to consider so that I can go back to it and say, update the document, here's the answers, and make sure all of our bases are covered. So we would be a little bit remiss if we didn't use this new model to have Codex build us an app. So what I'm curious to see is, can it sort of reverse engineer an existing app I have? I recently created this simple little app where I can just jot down ideas, I can move things around, and it's got Google OAuth. So I asked Codex to create me a PRD with no technical specifications, only the requirements based on what this app actually does. I'm going to hand that PRD back to Codex in a whole new directory and see if it can build something similar just based on that PRD. Okay, I'm inside of Codex. I am going to set the model to GPT 5.2. They will have a model coming out that's specifically tuned for Codex. It'll probably be GPT 5.2 Codex Max Ultra Best Ever model. But for now, we've got GPT 5.2 inside of Codex. There's a PRD in this directory. I want you to read it and build the app based on that PRD. That one file is literally all it has to work from. Now, I didn't read this PRD because I figured this was a good test of Codex to see if it can both write the PRD and then read the PRD and recreate it. So I'm kind of hoping everything is in here. All right, we're gonna let that cook for a bit. Okay, this is a little bit scary. It worked for 6 minutes and 13 seconds. Says it's done. This is an app that I have struggled with both Gemini and finally got Claude Code to get it to work in its initial stages. So I am skeptical that this is up and running, but I can't wait to see what it looks like. All right, it's got sign in. Okay, this is interesting. Enter email to sign in, but that's not Google authentication. Enter your name. I'm not sure where this is authenticating to. Okay. New idea. I mean, it's got a place for notes. That is kind of what I want. All right, this was the sticking point in the past, was the, yeah, see the dragging. I can't drag things into the folder. I can at least move them around. All right, in fairness, part of the specification for creating the PRD was I did not want any technical specifications. I wanted it only to be what the app does, purely requirements. And I did say it needed Google OAuth, but I suppose that is technically a technology, so it stripped that out. I don't know exactly what kind of authentication it thinks it's doing, but it does have something, so I have to give it credit for that. That looks surprisingly good, except I can't seem to drag an idea into the folder and have ideas go inside folders. So I will say this was the major sticking point when I initially built this. I had Gemini build it. It had all kinds of trouble with dragging, especially dragging anything into a folder. All right, let's try this again. All right, that is much better. Can I drag it out? Apparently, dragging things into and out of other objects is a sticking point. All right, great. I did have to have a couple of back and forths with it. It thought it had fixed it. It really wasn't fixed, but it really only took a couple of nudges from me to get that working, and it's really smooth. The Gemini one, even when it finally did get working, it was still pretty clunky. So I have to say, this was super fast and in the end, super smooth. So let's try one more thing. Hey, this is great. This is working exactly how I want it, but it's kind of boring. Can you make it like really fancy and elegant? Actually make it maybe kind of fun and silly and colorful? Like I want to go use it. Be creative. All right, it worked for 2 minutes. What you got? Nice. It does seem to be sticking to the blue theme that Codex has liked in the past, but I mean, I can't fault that. I have to say, I do actually quite like, there's kind of a 3D effect here. I love that the color changes when I hover over it. This little edge goes from blue to yellow. All right, nice work, Codex. All right, so I just wanted this to be a very quick little test of what they're saying should be really an upgrade. This should be across the board, better sort of everyday conversation, better at coding, better at data analytics. They did kind of call out some business use cases as being specifically enhanced. I didn't really go into those because, frankly, I don't work with a whole lot of spreadsheets, so I didn't feel like I could give those a fair test. But based on what I saw, I think it's a solid upgrade. It looked like all of the writing was just a little bit easier to understand, a little bit more streamlined, and a little bit more user-friendly. The identification of my desk mess, it definitely was able to be more specific about a few of the things, like the fact that my desk is a movable standing sitting desk and some of the specific technology on it. And then the improvements that I asked for were all good. They were good on both sides, but they were just much more specific action-oriented things I could do to improve my environment. And then what I saw Codex doing, it created that app just lightning fast. Now, unfortunately, it did still have a couple of bugs, but hey, when's the last time you coded something that didn't have a couple of bugs? It was able to fix them with just a little bit of nudging and didn't run into any kind of erroring that it just couldn't get out of. It didn't seem to run amok anywhere. These were just your typical little, hey, you need to kind of fix that, look at that again, try that one more time kind of day-to-day bugs. So I can't fault it for that. And then in the end, I asked it to be creative and give me a new UI. And it was definitely an improvement over UIs that it's given me in the past when I said, hey, be creative, give me something fun and colorful. So I do think this is not a seismic shift, but it is definitely going to be an all-around upgrade. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.